Well, good evening, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this Meet the Candidate event this evening for Township Trustee for Liberty and Westchester Townships. My name is Andy Durajai, and I have the honor of serving as Vice President and Dean at Miami University over our regional campuses. I also want to take this time to recognize a couple of key groups that have really helped co-sponsor this event. First, I'd like to recognize the Lakota District Parents Council for their great work and contributions so we could be here tonight. And I'd also like to recognize our partners at the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance. They've done great work and been active partners, and both groups are very committed to seeing our communities continue to grow. So at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. John Foran, who will give us the rundown of the events this evening. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you, Andy. Yeah, and let me add my own thanks, both to the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance and the Lakota District Parent Council, and for our candidates for being here. And I appreciate the being given the privilege of moderating the event tonight. We met ahead of time, the candidates. We met ahead of time and went over the basic ground rules, but let me explain quickly for the audience what this will look like. We'll go basically for about an hour tonight, and there are three parts to the event. So we'll start momentarily with opening statements that will be 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes in length, and we'll do those alphabetically by last name. And then after that, we will move directly into questions that have not been seen by any of the candidates. So they will be new to those questions, and we'll cover questions for about 45 minutes, and then we'll end the event with closing statements in reverse alphabetical order, up to 1 minute in length there. And because we are running the same night as a Bengals game, we absolutely promise we will not bump into the Bengals game. As I was talking about earlier, I'm actually a Browns fan, so I don't care, but I know a lot of people in our community, do care about that. So we'll take care of that too. But without further ado, let me introduce tonight's candidates. We have all 6 of the candidates, certified candidates running for Liberty Township and Westchester Township Trustee. So in alphabetical order, joining us tonight are Mr. Trent Emeneker, running for trustee in Westchester Township, Mr. Tom Farrell, running in Liberty Township, Mr. Todd Minier, running for Liberty Township, Buck Rumpke, running for Liberty Township, Mark Welch, running in Westchester Township, and Lee Wong, running in Westchester Township. And without further ado, let me move us to our candidates' opening statements, which, as I said, are in alphabetical order and up to 2 minutes each. And so, Mr. Emeneker, if you would like to start us off with that.
Yeah, thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. My name is Trent Emeneker, and I'm the fiscal conservative who's running for trustee in Westchester. Life is about choices. Some we get to make, and some get made for us. 20 years ago, I chose to start serving our country as a Marine. 8 years ago, when I left active duty, I chose to attend Columbia Business School and earn my MBA. 5 years ago, when a job brought my wife and I to the area, we decided to make Westchester our home. I've got 2 sons who are 5 and 3. They get to decide what they want for breakfast every morning. I didn't choose to get laid off from GE when the pandemic began, but I did get to choose my response. And now I work as a consultant, helping technology firms deliver their products on time. Like everyone here, I'm passionate about our country and our community, and I want to make them a better place. My wife, Emily, wants you to know, though, sometimes I get a little too passionate, even if it's mostly about college football. This is a nonpartisan race, and I'm running as a nonpartisan. I'm a lieutenant colonel in Marine Corps Reserves, and as long as I wear a country's uniform, will not run on a partisan platform. Legally, I could. Ethically, I won't. I decided to run for trustee because I want to make sure Westchester stays the kind of place my 2 sons will choose to live in and work in when they're grown. I decided to run for trustee because I'm a fiscal conservative. The current board approved spending almost $2.5 million on landscaping for an interstate exit. That doesn't meet my measure of quality spending that makes our community safer and better and attracts the long-term infrastructure we need. I decided to run for trustee because Westchester needs a vision for the next 20 years. And I know that to maintain a great community, we have to work hard every single day to get better. That's why I'm running for Westchester trustee. My name is Trent Emeneker, and I look forward to answering your questions and earning your vote this November. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Farrell.
Good evening, everybody. First, I'd like to thank Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance, Dr. Foran, for this opportunity. I am Tom Farrell. My wife and I have been married for 31 years. We have 3 wonderful children, Chelsea, Brady, Kyle, and all of them are luckily living locally and contributing to their communities and our local economy, which makes my wife and I very happy. I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Dayton. I was raised Irish Catholic in a family that stressed family values and community involvement. I have been heavily involved in the community for as long as I can remember. I think I've been involved with Liberty Township for 18 years now, 8 years as a trustee and 10 years with Zoning Commission, the Vision Committee, Economic Development Committee, and the Parks Committee. I do believe that one of my biggest assets, however, is this community is my over 30 years of business experience, which includes running my own business for 25 years. A lot of people talk about fiscal responsibility and making the tough decisions, but I have lived it, and I bring these experiences to Liberty. So I love Liberty and what it has to offer. I believe Liberty's future is very bright, but I am concerned execution of our current strategy and creation of future strategies will impact this township for generations to come. I believe that my biggest contribution is to continue to use my experience, both business and local government, to make sure that we execute the correct strategies at the correct time in a fiscally responsible manner. My background attests to my commitments to the community and my longevity to my commitments. I believe that my passion, my vision, and dedication will continue to be an asset to Liberty Township, both now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manier.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Manier. I grew up in Westchester. I'm a proud Lakota graduate. My wife and I, Jamie, have been married for, we just celebrated our 30th year anniversary, and we have 2 amazing sons. Education and career-wise, I have a bachelor's from the University of Cincinnati in finance. After college, I went to work for General Motors and General Electric. And during my 10 years with General Motors, I went back to school on a GM fellowship to earn my MBA at Indiana University in finance and marketing. And my mom became ill after those 10 years, and that's when we moved back to Liberty Township. And I went to work for AT&T for 10 years, and I've been with Procter & Gamble for almost 11 years, and I'm currently a brand director working on Crest and Oral-B. I want to share just real quickly 3 areas that are of important interest to me as I think about the township, and hopefully we'll get a chance to unpack these more. But from a development standpoint, I've seen forecasts published by the township that show a planned population growth to almost double where we are in the next 15 years. I do not support a plan to double our population in 15 years. It doesn't support the commitment to the citizens of Liberty Township of keeping Liberty a safe, upscale rural community. And the way I think about Liberty Township is that we should be thinking of it more like Indian Hill and less like Colerain Avenue. Secondly, as it relates to taxes, again, we can talk more about this probably later, but we've got headwinds with struggles at Liberty Center. There's still storefronts all throughout the community that are empty from COVID. And, you know, roads is always a difficult thing from a funding standpoint, and our budget turns negative 24 months from now. Lastly, and importantly, Constitution and freedom. Our president and governor are very comfortable with stealing our freedoms, shutting down businesses, and they're quickly walking us, in my opinion, away from government by the people and for the people to government dependency. And trustees take an oath to support the Constitution and the township, and they can, and I will, work to stop any unlawful overreach on our freedoms for businesses, parents, and citizens. So when you want to understand where my head is on it, think about Florida and Governor DeSantis and not something like Governor DeWine's imitation of California. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rumpke.
Hi, I'm Buck Rumpke. I have worked at Rumpke for 50 years and retired last October. I gained a lot of experience in the business world through them. But besides that, I did other things. But first, let me tell you about my family. My wife and I have been married 49 years. We have 3 children, 2 of which live in Liberty Township, and 6 grandchildren who are attending various schools around Liberty Township. So I am firmly entrenched here, and I'm happy to be here. I've never been as happy in one place. I think Liberty is a wonderful place to live, and my objective is to keep things the way they are. Protect Liberty from things that might come around the corner. Besides working for Rumpke and learning about the business world through them, I also developed a subdivision, and I also developed commercial property. And I serve now on the Butler County Planning Commission, and that has given me an insight into what developing is. And, I've got a lot of experience doing those things. And even in Oxford, Ohio, I was able to convince the city of Oxford to see the benefits of a new way to approach student housing. It changed Oxford tremendously, about 10 years ago. And I'm bringing all of this experience to Liberty. I am retired. I have time to devote to the job, and there won't be anything that will get past me. And with that, I will close and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Welch. Or Mr. Welch?
It must be froze.
Looks like he might be. Could we go to Mr. Wong and then we'll circle back to Mr. Welch? How's that sound?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Lee Wong. I'm the current trustee of Westchester Township. I want to start out right away that the most important factor for residents to elect a person is to elect a person who you can trust and has the knowledge to manage our township with no allegiance to anyone other than the residents which I represent. My background is I'm retired from U.S. Army, 20 years active duty. I have a master's degree from University of Cincinnati. I'm married for 39 years. This is my home. My daughter, my grandson is here. And I want to make this the best place, better place than I found it. Westchester is one of the biggest municipalities in the county, and that we are premier township. We have over business here is over $3 billion valuation, and that Mr. Welch and I and my fellow trustee have always keep it in the black. Fiscal responsibility. Our bond rating is AAA. AAA bond ratings, that means you can't go any higher than that. We are one of the most responsible township in the state, and that we are always here for the town, for the residents. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. And this is always the risk when we do this kind of thing on Zoom. It looks like we've lost connectivity with Mr. Welch. So I think we're going to work on that on the side here, but let me go ahead and move us to the questions, but I'd like to reserve time for Mr. Welch to give his opening statement when we're able to reconnect with him. So if, that may come at some point here that we're not sure when, but I want to make sure we give that opportunity to him. With that said, let me, at least for now, move us directly to the questions, if I may, which were developed with significant input from members of the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance, and I appreciate that. And according to the rules for the forum, all the questions will be addressed to each of the candidates, and they will all have the opportunity to respond. And what we'll do, and also to just maximize the fairness of equal time here, is we'll rotate the order in which each candidate will answer so that no one's always going first or going last, that kind of thing. Quite a few of the questions address specific issues of public policy, and we'll get to those, but I'd like to actually start by talking more broadly, if we can, about how each candidate, how each of you ultimately views the job of serving as a township trustee, what makes you a good fit for that, why you want to do it, and ultimately what you see your role being vis-a-vis other policymakers in the area, the community, and what your priorities might be in office. And so we'll unpack all of that with individual questions here. Let me start really with the most basic question, because it's very likely that many of the people in the audience may not have a particularly good sense of what a township trustee does. So let me start with that. And if we can make this a 2-minute question, basically, could you describe the basic roles and responsibilities of a township trustee in Ohio? How does government at that level affect day-to-day life for the people who live in the community? Where do you get your revenue at the trust as a township? And ultimately, why do you want to serve in that role for our community? So again, 2 minutes each. Can we start with Mr. Farrell, and then we'll move sort of alphabetically that way?
You're muted. Tom, you're muted.
Oh, so sorry. I hope your daughter didn't start the timer yet. You asked several questions. So I'm going to start with why I am running, and then I'll talk a little bit about what you asked second, which was what we do as Liberty Township trustees or as trustees. In life, we have choices when it comes to our community. My dad always said, you have 2 choices in life. You can either help write the book or you can read it. And I was taught by my parents and teachers at an early age to get involved with the community and be the author of that book. And that's one of the reasons why I do it. One of the smartest things I think I ever did was to move to Liberty. It truly is a great place to raise a family and a wonderful time to be in Liberty. So what do we do as trustees? The main focus and function that we have to, our pillars are our roads, police, fires, cemeteries, and zoning. The biggest expense to our budget is our police and fire. Those are the services that we supply to the residents. Those, I believe in both townships, are the highest part of our budget. It is a tough task to manage, but our job is to keep our residents safe and to make sure that they have the services that they deserve in the township. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manier.
So, yeah, I won't be overly redundant with some of Tom's comments, but obviously, the trustees need to lead the township fiscally and providing, basic services for the township and, roads, police, fire, those types of things. But also in the Ohio Revised Code, as I've studied more about townships and being a trustee, it talks about trustees being the CEOs or the chief executive officers of the township. And to me, that implies a significant, important leadership role in the township and strategic thinking around, what the township needs to be, not only, this year and next year and balancing budgets, but, what is the vision for the township and how do we get there going forward? So I think that's a critical piece as well. And then just, generally part of that vision should just be, protecting the life and lives of the people in the community in a way that, makes it a safe place and just a great place to raise a family and go to school and the things that most of us are looking for. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rumpke.
You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? The township is led by the 3 trustees, but there are boards that guide the trustees, the Board of Zoning Commissions and the Planning Commission. But the decisions are made by the trustees, and those decisions concern people. So I think that the main purpose of the trustees, besides overseeing the fiscal dollars and cents of fire and police and streets, and but it's to interpret and to understand what is happening to the people of the township. Rather than steering the township over the people, we need to coordinate and appease and keep the people happy that are coming before the board and explaining their problems and their desires. So that's the way I think we should lead the township. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We still don't have Mr. Welch back with us. So let me go ahead and go to Mr. Wong.
Sure, thank you. Well, trustee government is one of the simplest form of government. There are only 3 trustees, and it was originally set up for a population of 5,000. We have almost 65,000. So everything is 2 votes majority. It's a very simple form of government, and we hire a township administrator as our CEO to enforce those policies that we set. It is a form of check and balance. Like Mr. Tom Farrell said, that the core services are road, police, fire, cemetery, and we also want to create an environment, development an environment that will attract quality business into our township. And for the last 16 years, we have been doing very well at that. That business is booming. We are the #2 job creator after Cincinnati, and that Westchester Township is a premier township. People want to work here, live here, because there was no, as a township, there is no city tax or earnings tax. And that it is the school, our tax is mainly from property tax, and over about 67% of it support our school system, Lakota schools. And the rest go to the county, and then we get about 16 cents back per dollar to do our services. And we have our own police force and fire department, and safety is very important for our township. The people must feel safe to live here and to work in Westchester.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ameneker.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I'll kind of skip over the questions that everybody's already answered about how a township works. So, and I'll talk about why do I want to? Well, for most of us, the only time we really have any interaction with the government is when we've had a bad day. Something's happened, there's been an accident, police get called, we have to have fire or EMS. And at the end of the day, we want to have safe and effective systems that provide the resources that we need to keep us safe. We want to feel able to pick up the phone and call somebody for help. That's what people care about in a safe community. And when you talk about what is the role of a trustee, well, it's not about what I want. It's about what we as a community need and what we as a community desire. And I'll give you a couple of anecdotes from folks, from voters who I've talked to as I've been out and about meeting them. In one neighborhood, as you go up and down the street, more than half the houses, I knocked on the door and they answered, and I said, well, what's on your mind? And they wanted speed bumps because cars come flying down their road. They don't have sidewalks, their kids play in the road, and they're looking for things to make their neighborhood, their street, their community feel safer for them. The way you find out about that is by getting out and listening and asking what makes a difference in people's lives. It's not about, spending a lot of money here. It's not about doing this there. It's about understanding what people really need and what they care about in their day-to-day lives. Why do I want to do it? Well, service has always mattered to me. Whether you're a person of faith or not, if you're part of a community, I believe that you owe something to the other members of that community. We all have different gifts and talents. Some of us are called to serve in different ways. But one of the ways that I feel called to serve is to serve as a trustee, because I deeply care about my community, making it a better place, and listening and understanding to folks from all different backgrounds, every neighborhood that we have in Westchester, every political persuasion, what it is that they want and need to feel safe, to continue to make Westchester the kind of place that people want to move to, that people want to get out and walk about in their neighborhoods and know their neighbors. Because if we get those things right, then everything else flows naturally from it.
All right, thank you. And we've been rejoined by Mr. Welch. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir, I sure can.
Great, I'm glad you're back. I wanted to, we moved ahead with questions, but
Sure.
said we would reserve time for your opening statement. If you'd like to do that
Why
now.
not?
Okay.
Yeah, we resolved one technical difficulty here already, and I had tested all my systems before I got online, and you just have to roll with the punches.
It is life under Zoom. It really
Yes,
is.
yes. Thank you. Well, thank you, John, and thank you, Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance, for this opportunity. My name is Mark Welch, and I've served as your Westchester Township trustee since 2014. That's 2 terms in 8 years. I'm a small business owner, been in business since 1999 and have 16 employees. I have 23 years in the private sector with corporate America sales and sales management experience. I have a degree in chemical engineering. I'm a conservative with a proven track record that shows hard work, dedication, and a love for Westchester Township. What I do is I separate the fact from the fiction, the reality from the fantasy. I research, study, and I vet every issue. Tonight, I'm going to make a case that Westchester is not only doing great, but we are thriving under our current leadership. So here are a few facts about how great we're doing in Westchester. Most of you know that Westchester has been named a few times as one of the best places to live in America today. That's actually 7 times. Most recently in 2014, 16, 17, and 18. Plus, Westchester Township was named the best community to live in Ohio in January of 2019. Believe it or not, Westchester Township is on track in 2021 to spend less money than we did in 2020. Another fact, since 2014, since I was first elected, Westchester Township has created 7,405 new jobs, and we've retained 14,149 existing jobs. And that's with a over $684 million capital investment with businesses. Ready Cincinnati, which is a regional economic development initiative, named Westchester one of the top winningest communities in Southwest Ohio for economic development in the last 3 years. That's 2018 to 20. As part of Westchester's 2019 and 20 strategic plan, we employed the National Citizen Survey to better understand the wants and needs of our residents. They said this: 96% of residents ranked Westchester as an excellent or good place to live. 95% ranked the overall quality of life in Westchester as excellent or good, and 96% ranked Westchester as an excellent or good place to raise children. Let's keep a good thing going. I look forward to answering your questions this evening.
Great, thank you very much. And let me go ahead and move on to the next question, which is for everyone. And it's the natural follow-up to the what does a trustee do? And that is, why do you want to serve in this role? And what is it about you and your personal background, your professional experiences, everything that you bring to the table that makes you a good fit for this position, and will help you serve effectively in this position? And drilling down a little bit more specifically on that, how has your background prepared you to work in a public position where you aren't the only boss in the room, but you essentially always have to work collaboratively with other people and convince people to come along with you and work as a body to move forward in solving problems, that kind of thing. Do you have examples of how you've worked collaboratively with people and how you're prepared to do that essentially? So kind of a big question potentially. So if we could have up to 2 minutes each on this, and if we can start with Mr. Manier and then move sort of alphabetically through things.
Thank you. So from a qualification standpoint, if we think about the business side of running a township, and I think about my background, you know, I've worked for 30 years with 4 of the best companies in the world: General Electric, General Motors, AT&T, and Procter & Gamble. And, you know, I'm not going to claim to be the smartest guy in the world, but I think, you know, that experience, along with being a small, successful business owner for more than a decade, is a pretty strong training ground for dealing with issues and, you know, people and budgets for successfully for the township. And, you know, you mentioned, you know, things like collaboration and working with different people. You know, I learned a long time ago that, you know, the most important thing about, you know, any organization or any business is, you know, having the right people on board and being able to, you know, work together and cooperate. And, you know, there's something that I also learned a while ago, and that is, you know, your teams and people that you work with, it's not about always agreeing. It's about, you know, being comfortable with having different points of views and respectfully, you know, handling those with each other, and you know, keep moving forward. And the different points of views are what gets you to, you know, the best solution. So, you know, I've got a good business background. I'm, you know, my roots are in the community. You know, I was born here. I will likely spend the rest of my life here. My interests are completely aligned with what I think the interests are with most of the citizens in Liberty Township. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rumpke.
There we go. Am I unmuted? Yes. Okay, so I spent my formative years working for a very small company, which has now grown into a very large company. And while I was working there, in general, I ran crews of people who all had to work with each other and accomplish a goal for that day. And that, so you'd say I was the crew boss, and I dealt with many different kinds of personalities, some of which nobody'd really want to deal with. And so I know how it might be down in the street department at Westchester, in Liberty. And then as I got further along in my development, I began to develop a subdivision with a couple of guys, and they all dropped out, and I was left holding the bag. But I didn't just go bankrupt and let it go. I finished it the way I said I was going to start it. Probably didn't make a dime up there, but I learned a lot. You don't learn from success, you learn from failure. You learn from problems. And I've dealt with all of those problems. I have built houses, developed property, owned commercial property. That will help me as we look at zoning, which is one of the primary things the trustees deal with. And I'll be able to understand what people are trying to say. And I am also retired. So now I have much more time to take care of the situation and to do all the background reads and to spend a lot of time looking at these plans so that nothing gets by me. And with that, I think I'd be the best guy to be a Liberty Township trustee. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Welch.
Yes, sir. Okay, so I believe that leadership is personal accountability and public delivery. It's a lot what Stephen Covey always talked about in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and also the 8th habit. I didn't bring this up in my first 2 minutes because, it's just one of those things that it was a change in my life. But I had a congressional appointment to the Naval Academy, and I spent about 2 years there. And every day when I was at the Naval Academy, I'd run through Bancroft Hall down to the intramural sports where I would wrestle. And on the wall, there was a poster there where it was men going through combat. Bombs were exploding. They were carrying their rifles with them. Their faces were all painted. And on the top, it said, there are those men you'd follow through hell. And on the bottom, it said, there are those men that you would push in. And over the years, I've just meditated on that. And leadership to me means always to do the right thing, not the convenient thing. Always care more about your people than you care about yourself. And third, never to ask someone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. So I think that I've demonstrated as a trustee that I have commitment, honesty, integrity, professional, and respect with this job. And I plan on continuing to do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wong.
Yes, my 16 years experience on the Board of Trustees is invaluable. I have served 20 years in the U.S. Army CID as special agent. It is the cream of the crop. There's only 300 of us. And I received a master's degree from University of Cincinnati. And I have worked for Johnson & Johnson in overseas worldwide. I was a director for the protection, I forgot. Is for security purposes. And I've been back in this community for 28 years, and I love to live here because it is safe, because I want to have a voice in this community, that I want to contribute to local government that will embrace all residents and corporate citizens by providing great service for them to prosper and enjoy their lives. Westchester is a vibrant and exciting place to live and work.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ameneker.
Yes, John, I'll answer, kind of your question in 2 parts. What makes me a good fit and how has my background prepared me? So I carry with me 2 lessons from the Marine Corps every day. One is that leaders never quit, period. If you quit, you let your team down, you let everyone around you down. 2, and this is another kind of simple aphorism, leaders eat last. And what that means in the Marine Corps is as simple as when you go out in the field and they show up with food, the highest ranking people actually serve the food. The lowest ranking people eat the food first. Sometimes you get to the end of the day or the end of the meal and there's no food left. So who goes hungry? It's the leaders who are serving the food, because that's what we should expect from our leaders. If we have the responsibility and the authority that goes with being in a position of power, like a trustee is, you have the authority to impact people's lives, there's a higher standard. And that's my background. That's what's prepared me to be a leader in that respect. What makes me a good fit to work collaboratively in anything that you do in life? You don't get it done by telling people what to do. You don't get it done by saying it's my way or the highway. You get it done by listening, by asking, by understanding people who have different perspectives, people who have different opinions, because it's kind of that magic melding of a lot of different people. That's where you get the really good outcomes. It's not about taking my idea and running with it or your idea and running with it. It's about taking the best of your idea and the best of my idea, communicating that effectively to each other, and then being able to lay out a vision that people can see, hear, and believe in. Because once you can do that, then you get people motivated to move in the same direction. And at that point, it's not really leadership anymore. You're just going along with everybody else who's also doing the right thing, because that you've established that common vision and you're going to the same place. And one other thing that makes me a good fit, I'm not going to hold anyone's age and experience against them because everybody here has more experience than I do. Business professional, I'm the youngest person here. But what that means is I bring a different perspective. My kids are young. And if you hear them running around upstairs, they got threatened to no end not to do that, but they still sound like elephants sometimes. So I'll apologize for that. But I'm just at a different phase in my life. And so I bring a very different perspective to bear. And I think when we try and develop that magic outcome, we need all the different perspectives from different ages, different backgrounds, different experiences, because that's how we can be most effective as a community. And that's how we can be most effective. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Farrell.
Thank you very much. Let's start with what makes me a good fit. I believe it's my background and my commitment to this community. My background is not one from politics, but dedicated to family, business, and community. I never thought I would be in politics. There is a difference between politicians and elected officials. I do believe that I'm an elected official, not a politician. In my opinion, that mix is an excellent foundation for a public official. My intentions are pure and without a personal agenda. I believe that my goals are achievable and realistic, and I represent the residents of Liberty as a whole to continue to make this a great place to live, work, place, and raise a family. My education, the 30 years of business experience, and my community service definitely positioned me as one of the best candidates. The 10 years I spent in Liberty zoning and the 8 years as a trustee, I've proven the ability to do what's best for the residents in a fiscally responsible way, with the residents' needs as my number one priority. It is about making decisions that are best for the residents and businesses of Liberty. As a trustee, you do need to listen to lead. And I'll be totally honest with you, that was really tough for me at first. But I learned fairly quickly that with Liberty at 44,000 people and at build out being 80,000, listening needs to be a number one priority of both the residents and the businesses. And it's crucial to the success. Leadership means listening and executing the visions. And that's what I believe that we have been doing. And that's what I would like to continue to do if I get reelected. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Because the clock is running on us, I'd like to move us actually to at least a couple of specific policy questions that in talking to people in preparation for this, it's a constant theme and a concern in both Liberty Township and Westchester Township, and that is growth, basically. The question of growth generally, how we should manage it, what our priorities ought to be in terms of spending, in terms of long-term planning, the balance of residential, industrial, business, retail, that sort of thing. So with all that said, could you talk about your vision as a township trustee of where we ought to be, prioritizing growth, managing growth, and what, in your view, should Westchester and Liberty Township, depending on where you are, what should it look like in 10 years? And what will be a success in 10 years or so in terms of growth of the area? And where are we at alphabetically here? Could we start with Mr. Welch on that?
Yes, sure. So I give all the credit to the trustees who have come before me to develop a comprehensive land use plan that was about 60% residential and 40% commercial industrial. That's given us a real nice balance for taxation purposes with regards to business taxation offsetting some of the taxation that would happen to residents. Today, we have untold number of businesses that are coming in. Businesses are very important because businesses bring jobs. Right now, today, Westchester enjoys a 1.3% unemployment rate. If you want a job in Westchester, you've got it. So it's important to know that these developments that are coming in, and I have something here just in the Journal News. This is another $250 million development, mixed multi-use, going in just right off of Union Center Boulevard there, and with the Dillon Corporation. And It's so important for us to keep an eye on the ball. And that ball is the core competencies within our township. It's police, fire, roads, cemeteries, and parks. What's not real well known in Westchester is that we have a plethora of parks. We have over 800 acres of parks. Now, one of those parks is the VOA Park, which, guess what? Westchester Township residents get full access to with no charge, but we haven't had to invest a dime into that park in order to enjoy it. Metro Parks does that. That is their core competency. Last year, we did have a 2 mil police and a 2 mil fire levy. The fire levy passed by 75%, and the police levy passed by 67%. So people in Westchester do value safety as long as we continue to focus on those core competencies and don't drift off into community centers and things like that. We're going to do just fine for years to come. If I just say one more thing, my vision for Westchester is to develop these urban-esque areas, pockets, almost like central business district, and then possibly connect those with walk, bike, hike paths. There's no way that we're going to develop bike, hike paths across all of Westchester where we've got rural roads. We've just got way too many miles. We're 35 square miles with 225 roads that Westchester's responsible for. But guess what? We have state roads here. We have county roads here. It is not feasible for us to develop these bike hike paths on those types of roads. So what I want to do, again, is connect urban-esque areas that have mixed multi-use with other mixed multi-use urban-esque areas where people live, work, and play.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Mr. Welch took all my glory and thunder. Westchester has less than 25% of the land and we are very careful, very, like Mr. Welch said, that certain pockets development, we watch it very carefully and make sure that it is meet our criteria. Westchester is not Washington, but board, we work with no matter how difficult, and we get things done. We don't get politics in here, and we make this a better community. That's what it's all about. And we are not like Mr. Tom Farrell said. We are not politicians. We are elected official by the people. We do what people want. That Westchester is a big community, and that we want to make the best place for people to live, work, and play.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ameneker.
Yeah. So what does Westchester look like in 10 years? Well, both Lee and Mark mentioned the development that's taken place, and Westchester certainly isn't built out, but you don't see very many cornfields or pastures left around. You still see a couple, and it always makes me smile when I do, because I grew up in the middle of nowhere full of soybeans, tobacco, and cornfields. But as we think about where we're going, I can tell you that I've been out in the community. I've talked to people. When there have been development decisions made, they feel like they don't have a voice. They see things going up and they don't like it, or they've given input, but it hasn't made it. And I understand. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying we can't develop because we have to. But what I am saying is that today, people don't feel like they've had a voice in that process. And if people don't feel like that, it doesn't matter anything, whether the outcome is good or not, they still feel like their voice wasn't heard. And at the end of the day, I think as elected officials, that's a failure if we can't create that vision together and move towards it jointly. So what does success look like in 10 years? Well, kind of the thing that we've talked around but not really mentioned is what makes people want to move here. And my wife and I, when we sat down 5.5 years ago in our tiny little 1-bedroom apartment and thought about where we were going to move, school district, school district, school district. That was priority number one for us. And I realize trustees don't affect school districts. That's a school board and that's taxing and it's very separate. But I want to make sure that we understand and that I'm clear that I am a strong supporter of our public school program, because that is what keeps us attractive to families moving in. For the rest, what does our business infrastructure look like? Well, kind of the magic of capitalism. We don't know what jobs are going to exist in 10 years. but we can know and understand what the right policies are. And I use the example, Detroit 1948, they thought they were going gangbusters. Back from the war, pumping out cars left and right. And then if you look at Detroit 30 years later, it was not a place that people wanted to live because the policies weren't good going forward. And so it's about being future oriented, proactive, and understanding you can't do everything. You can do some things. The other thing that I want to emphasize is it's not all about businesses and jobs. It's also about community. And when we think about what matters to people here, I'll use the example of senior citizens. As I've been out meeting folks, many people from my age on up, and brought up their parents, their grandparents, and the need and desire that they have for a place for them to congregate. That's the kind of thing that I think is important for us as a community. If we care about each other and care about our community, we can find a way to provide that social network and support for people. You can't do everything, but you can do some things.
John, may I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
I'd like to answer to that. I'm a longest serving trustee here. I've knocked on 18,000 doors for the first time, 18,000. Second time, I knocked on 10,000. Third time, I knocked on 8,000. That's already 36,000. I listened to residents. I went around on a bicycle, listened to them, talked to them. Our trustee meetings are open meeting. Anyone can come up here and talk to us, yell at us. We listen to them. This is what makes this government work, and that we have a place for seniors at the library. In the past, we even gave $100,000 to every year to the senior center over there at Cox Road, and that we want to wean that off and want them to become more independent, fundraising, and make it a vibrant place. We always help them. We have a place for them at the new library that they can use a program, and we even offer the Morehouse barn a place for them, renovated nicely with air condition for them. And somehow they're not happy with it. They want more, and that we have trustee Becker say once that really social services is really not a township business. That belongs to the county. They just received $80 million from the government American Rescue Plan. They should come in to step up on it. Council on Aging, they receive over $2.75 million on a levy. What is it? That these are the services should be provided. Township Trust, Westchester Township have been helping the seniors make it a better place, but seems like no one is happy. They want more and more.
All right, thank you. Mr. Menaker, would you like to respond to that?
Well, Lee obviously knows more about the background of what's going on because he's been a trustee and he's privy to things that I just don't know. But I can tell you, Lee, I did knock on 18,000 doors 20 years ago, but I've knocked on more than 1,300 this time. And I've been out in the community and I've met people, and I can tell you what they're saying. You may disagree, and that's fine, but they are saying something different.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Farrell.
How much time do we have on this one?
2 minutes. Although
I could talk about this one all night. What is the vision for Liberty? We have somewhat of an empty canvas, and so this is one of the fun parts of this job. Looking at that vision, that crystal ball that none of us have. My vision for the township vision is pretty simple. We work with the community stakeholders for over 18 months, creating a vision plan recently, and I intend to follow it with open eyes, meaning that things do change. We may need to adjust. But at the end of the day, my vision is to be the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family. And I believe we're on our way to doing that. That means implementing responsible growth that decreases our tax burden, infrastructure that supports that growth. It's not an easy task. We can't stop the growth. People think we can. They want to be the last ones in our township. Not happening. They want to be here for a reason. We're smack dab in the middle of Cincinnati and Dayton. We're closing this Metroplex, and we're excited about that, but we got to do it right the first time. We do have a small issue. For every dollar of services we use as residents, it costs the township $1.50. Businesses are the opposite. We need a good mix of business and residential. We don't have that. Currently, we're 87% residential. Is it okay to be a bedroom community? Absolutely, as long as taxes don't get too high for our residents to want to stay here. With that said, what is the vision? What's the plan? What's the number one thing that will help the next generation? Milliken. Milliken exit is the future to Liberty Township. With us being only half built out, as I mentioned, at 44,000 residents, we must have the vision to create a sustainable future for Liberty. The foundation to that sustainable future is Milliken. We need Milliken to give us the infrastructure to support the growth, as well as the financial independence to decrease the tax burden on our residents. My generation probably won't need Milliken, but for the next generation, Milliken Way will be the foundation to its future. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Manier.
So there were really a lot of good comments that have been made previously, and I want to connect to one of them that Mr. Welch mentioned, and that is that Westchester, I believe he said, has 40% commercial. And I think Liberty Township, if I'm not mistaken, only has 18% commercial. And we need to make serious hay with the remaining commercial opportunity in Liberty Township. And it can't be like Liberty Center where we have, so many good but very low paying jobs with, people making $15 and $17 an hour. We need the General Electrics, we need the AK Steels and those type of businesses with higher incomes for the business and their employees to accomplish what we need from a tax standpoint. So that's one. And Milliken came up. I'm totally supportive of Milliken for the business development, the right type of business development. It can't just be another Liberty Center. We see what's happening at Liberty Center. It's in trouble, and we can't do that again. One point, again, I'll reemphasize that I do disagree with wholeheartedly is that moving from 40,000 population to 80,000 population in 15 years is not the right thing for the community. The citizens don't want that, and we don't need that. We do need to get the right type of businesses in here to support the tax base, but we don't need to add a doubling of our population. Think about that as a voter. Do you want to have twice as many people here on the roads in your community as what you have today? That doesn't deliver the vision that I think we're trying to articulate and create here for Liberty Township. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rumpke.
What I would like to see as the vision for Liberty Township is protected growth, controlled growth. And by that, I mean, we only have a little bit of land left. We've got a couple of commercial corridors. We're heading down the road to the Milliken interchange. And the Milliken interchange is going to take a lot of scrutiny and a lot of things to happen the right way, because we can't build it on our own. We can only create the well of the federal government and ODOT and OKI to help us to build it. And you're right, we need good high-paying jobs in the commercial sector up here, but it's apparently very hard to do this far north. Westchester is able to do it after they did their Union Center exchange or interchange. But we had all of that land over by Christ Hospital, and now it's going to become a Costco and some offices and some apartments. And that's not the kind of growth that I vision for Liberty Township. How do we get it? We control the growth. We control the developers. and we get the kind of growth that we want so that it doesn't overwhelm the schools and it doesn't overwhelm the roads. And, we're in control of that. That's why I would like to be a trustee in the future. And that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. The hour always goes very quickly with these kinds of events. And so we're already at the hour, but there is a question that I think we need to address, because it's, so before we move to the closing statements, let me ask this question. That is, it relates ultimately to the relationship between Liberty and Westchester Township, because I mean, it's somewhat unique in a couple of ways. One is that in both townships, growth is happening along the I-75 corridor. And so there are opportunities there, and it's kind of popped up in some of the comments. There are opportunities for the townships to compete with one another in some sense, or to cooperate with one another. And it raises an interesting question there. But also, sort of as a resident of Liberty Township, we're really unique in that the two townships share a school district that the community takes a lot of pride in. This has come up. And for a lot of people that I know, including our own family, it's not even so much a question of, do you live in Liberty Township or Westchester Township, but it's, where do your kids go to school? Is it east or west ultimately? Because I mean, we just tend to think of these as two parts of a community, and these identities kind of run deeply with the school district. As the parent of two East graduates and a senior at Lakota West, like, that was a tough adjustment for us in a lot of ways. So I mean, but you have schools there sort of defining the community in interesting ways, and you have side by side townships that are in some sense competitors, some sense cooperative partners. So having said all that, as a trustee, do you see the townships as competitors, as partners? How would you define that relationship? And what's the relationship between the trustees and the township governments and the schools? There's a big question, but if you could answer it in relatively brief form, that would be great. And if could we go back to, well, let's see, where do we want to start with that? How about Mr. Ameneker?
Sure, John. So the answer is, the last thing any of us want to do is get in a race to the bottom. We don't want to compete against each other in a kind of beggar thy neighbor kind of way. We share a school district. The only person who wins from that kind of a race is the developer, or whoever the business is coming in, from what we offer to them. We have to collaborate. We have to figure out a way to work together, and competition is not all bad, because sometimes at a competition, you get the best ideas and the best way forward. But the way it should work is we collaborate, because it is a larger community. The school district underlies us. We are separate townships, and we have our own separate interests. We have to define the areas that we agree, and the areas where we know we can collaborate and work together on, because people move from Westchester to Liberty, people move from Liberty to Westchester, people work back and forth. It's not like, yeah, they're our neighbors, but they're also our friends. And then, 2 years from now, maybe we've swapped roles completely. We have to understand how to get along with each other. And that's just communication. It's picking the phone up and saying, what are you thinking? What can we work on to get better? And it's not necessarily development. It's not necessarily this. It's collaboration across all kinds of areas, because that's how we get better as a community. And when we approach it from that bigger perspective, that's the right way forward.
All right, thank you. Mr. Farrell.
Yeah, when I first got in, it was a little combative, but I will tell you that it isn't even close to combative at this point. We have worked together. We've learned from each other because of the schools tying us together, one chamber that ties us together. We have worked together. One of the things that keeps us from working with our own trustees, as much as we do the other township trustees, is sunshine laws. We aren't allowed to speak to our trustees unless it's a public forum. And so Mark, Lee, they can tell you that we talk on a regular basis. We communicate, we share ideas, we learn from each other so that we don't make the same mistakes. And at the end of the day, we are a better community because of it. We can't survive and succeed if our neighbors fail and they feel the same way. So the collaborative effort that we've worked together to share and work has been one of the things I believe that makes this a great place to live, work, play, and raise a family. Now, is there some competition? Absolutely. But it's friendly competition because we know if our neighbors survive, if our neighbors do well, we will do well. If they fail, we will fail. And so I believe, and maybe we'll hear from them, when we hear from them, they can collaborate this, that our abilities to work together has been a huge asset for this entire community.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manier.
I think it's a great question because I think so many of our citizens do view Westchester and Liberty Township as one community for sure. And you bring up probably the best point about the fact that we are one school district, and that is something that ties, all of us together. And I actually think that, trustees should actually, I would like to be more involved in the schools with everything that is going on in schools today and the challenges and the consternation that we are facing at schools. They need help. And, I think that we can play a role in helping them. And that will require cooperation between the trustees in Westchester. And then the second place is, we have adjacent property lines with one another. And I don't know to the extent that it's, aggressively worked today, but to the extent that we are next to each other and we do touch each other, our ability to plan with each other and develop those areas in the most productive way for both townships is a good opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Rumpke.
You're muted, Buck.
Okay. It's hard to say how the trustees will work together now because I'm not a trustee. But what I would say is that the communities work together very valuably in other ways. One way is the community foundation that is together. I think it's now called Northern Cincinnati Foundation. And they're completely together, and then the school district for sure. But in other ways, politically, we all work for whichever political bent we have in national elections. And Westchester and Liberty are always working strongly in those elections. So, Westchester and Liberty were at one time one township, a very large township back in the rural days. But yeah, we look at each other in a very friendly way. And I think I look at everybody here that's running in a very favorable way. So that's the way I would leave it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Welch.
Yes, so we can't ignore that different jurisdictions are always going to be competing with one another. Earlier, I said keeping our eye on the ball. And for me, one of the things that means is keeping the eye on sustainability, competitiveness, and marketing our community. Marketing our community to corporations across the country, whether they across the United States or even in other parts of the world that are looking to come here. We actively seek out those kinds of relationships with those folks. So we're always competing. I will say there is a bit of an imbalance, and I have the utmost respect for the trustees in Liberty Township. But Westchester today has a appraised valuation or an assessed property valuation of about $2.4 billion. And that's only second behind Cincinnati, which has about 6.5 billion. Liberty Township's about 1.1. Because of that assessed property valuation, Westchester provides 70% of the local funds that go to Lakota schools, and Liberty provides about 30%. What I would like to see is this development that they talk about I can tell you that Westchester is 35 square miles. Buck hit on this a little bit. Liberty is only about 28 square miles. So it's a smaller, it is a smaller township. So, as we go forward, it's important that we make sure that we continue to drive business and drive jobs. I can tell you there's a lot more folks that drive from Liberty to work in Westchester than there are from Westchester to Liberty at this point. We know that from Site USA. So one of the other things that I wanted to kind of touch on here real quick was there was a comment made earlier about 10 years from now, what are we going to look like? And I think it was Mr. Emeneker who mentioned that, well, Middletown looked like a certain way in 1980s. He didn't specifically say a year, but the problem with Middletown is they were a one business town. When Armco failed, Middletown failed. And what happened in Middletown is that when Armco was there, they were building all kinds of parks and community centers and all kinds of things that people could put their names on. But in Westchester, we have 6 targeted communities. We have life sciences, information technology, advanced manufacturing, corporate headquarters, which with a lot of Class A office space, which is still about 97% occupied, the healthcare industry and the consumer marketing. These are because we have such a diverse business base, it sort of protects us from recession kinds of situations. In 2020, when COVID came through and was shutting things down, do you realize that Westchester Township sailed through that? If it hadn't been for the federal government printing all kinds of money that were being sent to the incorporated areas, to the counties, to the states, a lot of these cities that are around us would not have made it because they have learned to live on income tax. Westchester lives on property taxes. 83% of the money that we collect is from property taxes. And guess what? In 2020, property valuations went up. So we sailed through it. We have a very diverse business community that sort of shields us from recession. And we are obviously willing to work with our neighbor to the north every single way we can. I love talking with Tom and Steve Schramm and whoever the next trustee might be, because I think it's really important that we do have a good working relationship, particularly when it comes to Lakota schools.
All right, thank you.
John, I just want to clarify. I said Detroit, 1948. I wasn't talking about Middletown.
You did mention Middletown, though.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Wong.
You're muted, Lee.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have spoken with Tom Farrell many times. We are on township business. We are in good relations. He even invited us to sit on the board, to have a board meeting presentation. Mark and I was there, and we worked very well. Yes, there's some competition when it comes to marketing. We always wanted, that's just a nature of the business. Westchester, like Mark said, we have quality business here, manufacturing, advanced, P&G, GE, AstraZeneca, biotech. But all these businesses, it's just like a high tide comes in, it floats all boat in a community in Liberty. We help out West Liberty Way. When they developed the intersection, we gave $6 million from our TIF fund. And we are always into regional growth because it helps all of us, all the supply chain, all good for us. Westchester is I would say laid a golden egg for the entire county. We are the cash cow because of all the businesses here, quality business, over 3,000 of them. And I'm very proud of what we have accomplished, and so as Liberty.
All right, thank you. And we now move to closing statements. And under the rules, we'll go in reverse order from the opening statements, which means we'll go back to Mr. Wong.
Okay.
And please hold these to 1 minute each. Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Yeah. Well, mine is very short. Like I say, Westchester is now Washington. We have a board of trustee. We work with each other. We are very vibrant community. Our township remains strong and will remain strong that way as long as I'm on the board. I like basic, simple township government, not a city. I heard some candidate mention that to become a city, which I'm totally against that, which is bad for our township. And I do what the people voted me to do. And I intend to do that for the next 4 years if they re-elect me again. And I will always be honest, serve this board with integrity, listen to the people, and they can always call me on my cell phone at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welch.
Yes, sir. I just want to, I guess, piggyback on what Mr. Wong said, particularly about cityhood. To me, you cannot be a conservative and want to be a city. I can tell you that give me 1 second. Cities, 2 villages voted themselves out of existence on Tuesday. That was 2019. Here you go. This was just this past week. Is this layer of government necessary? Claremont County Village may disappear, Owensville. So someone who says they're a true conservative and they're actually considering being cityhood, where you're going to have more government and higher taxes, it's just unacceptable. Westchester Township, you can call it a miracle if you want to call it. But there's a lot of things that make this thing work. The fact that Interstate 75 runs right through us is great. The fact that Union Center Boulevard exit developed like it did with businesses in it instead of fast food restaurants and gas stations. You know, this took a lot of planning. It took a lot of development over the years. And I got to tell you, my hat is off to all of those entrepreneurs, all of those developers, all of those builders that put their money up to make sure that Westchester had the housing that we needed and to have the business that we need. I mean, they're the real heroes in this thing. Me, I'm just a public servant that you know, makes conservative decisions with regards to our core competencies: police, fire, roads, cemeteries, and parks. Vote for Mark Welch.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rumke.
You're muted. Buck, you're muted.
Okay. In short, I'd like to say that I care very deeply about Liberty Township. And I also, more importantly, care about the people of Liberty Township. We're going to go through a period of very much growth and very high expenditures. It's going to take a level head to look at that. And that's what I'm saying I can do. Now, as I canvass the neighborhoods now looking for votes, I have met very, very many people in all stages of their life. I've met the young and the old and the single and the married and the children and the childless. And they all have different needs and desires for Liberty Township. I feel I am uniquely able to get us to that point where we can fill those needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menear.
I want to mention one thing that I think is really important for Liberty Township when you compare Westchester and Liberty Township from a growth standpoint and attracting these great businesses. So the key reason why Union Center has exploded with business, and they have AK Steel and they have GE and they have Procter & Gamble and many others, is that they don't have an income tax. The way Liberty Township has moved forward with JEDs like at Liberty Center, the employees as well as the businesses pay 1.5% income tax. GE and Procter & Gamble don't want to come to a community where their employees and their business earnings have to pay 1.5%. So we have to change our model with how we do business. That's one. Two more things. It might feel softer, but just something about me, you know, my roots are here in the community. My parents graduated from Lakota. I graduated from Lakota. My wife did, my sons did, you know, countless cousins and aunts and uncles. When I talk about maintaining the safe, upscale, rural character of Liberty Township that we all moved here for and that we love, I know what I'm talking about because I've lived here, you know, the majority of my life, and I've benefited greatly from it. And so, you know, why wouldn't I give back to it? And if you look at, you know, leaders in our community that have been elected, even trustees historically in Liberty Township, some of the most invested, committed ones like Dave Kern and Christine, you know, they have long-standing histories in the community, and I think that's worth something. The last thing I want to say is, and I'm the only one talking about this, but I don't think I should be, safety in the community is not just about fire and police. Our country, our constitution, our freedom is under attack. Many of our leaders don't value freedom, don't defend the Constitution, and really don't like America. Our president and his team is walking us one step at a time towards a socialist country. I don't know how else to say it. And so this puts our way of life in Liberty Township and everywhere at risk. And I'll say it again, trustees have tremendous amount of influence and actual authority over their citizens. And it's outlined in the Ohio Revised Code to stop things like business shutdowns, keeping kids out of school, putting your aging parents in isolation and you can't see them. And if people think that this is stopping sometime soon, I would say that they're wrong. And I, as a trustee, am not only here to do the work of the business of the township, which is the traditional thing that everybody thinks about and talks about, but the world has changed. This is another piece that every level of elected official in government needs to step into. And I'm willing to do that. Vote for me on November 2nd. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you to the chamber. Thank you to all that have attended. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. And thank you, Dr. Foran. I think at the end of the day, the experience I have in both local government and business, coupled with my passion, vision, and the dedication that I've shown to Liberty Township makes me the best candidate. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. My intentions are pure and without personal agenda. My dedication and longevity to my commitments show that not only do I get involved, I stay involved until it's completed. I have to go back to one thing I said in my opening statement to say it again. The next 4 years are crucial to Liberty's long-term success. Liberty has a bright future. However, the execution of the current strategy and creation of future strategies that will impact this township for generations to come. And I believe I'm the person you want creating and executing those strategies. I would greatly appreciate your consideration and your vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And the final word goes to Mr. Menaker.
Yeah. Well, first, John and Andy, thanks for what Miami's done. Joe and the chamber, thank you for hosting this. We know there's a lot of work that's gone into it and we appreciate it. Tonight, you heard from people passionate about our community. I'm here because I believe it's time for a change. It's time to focus on where we go for the next 20 years and not where we came from. It's time to restore fiscal sanity. You can find out more about me on my website, trentfordtrustee.com, where you'll see what people like my high school football coaches or the Marines I was privileged to lead in Afghanistan have to say about me as a person and as my character. You'll also see I'm not afraid to go on the record with what I believe. And as my two opponents in this race have mentioned, the topic of city has come up. And I'm not afraid to go out in public and write down what I believe. I'm the only candidate willing to do that because when people ask me a question, I'm not afraid to give them my opinion. That doesn't mean it's right, but it's what I think. And I think the voters have a right to know that. I chose to be a Marine. I chose to marry my wife, start a family, and move to Westchester and start my own business. Now I'm choosing to run for trustee, and I ask that you choose to vote for me on November the 2nd. And after you choose to do that, that you tell your friends, your neighbors, your family members, your fellow churchgoers about me and about why you've chosen to support me. My name is Trent Immonecker, and I'm the fiscal conservative running for trustee in Westchester. Thank you for your vote.
All right, thank you. And we'll have to close on that point. On behalf of my colleagues here at Miami, our partners at the Lakota District Parent Council and the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance, first of all, thank you to our candidates for joining us this evening for what I think was a very thoughtful, productive discussion. I really appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Amanda Lehman, a colleague here at Miami, who's been working behind the scenes to make sure Zoom doesn't quit on us while we're doing this, and the Facebook live feed kept working as well. Thank you very much for that. And thanks to my daughter, Kendall, who's been handing me cue cards about timing. And she's a senior at West and is teaching us that West it's okay, even though we've been East Siders for so long. But and finally, thanks to everyone who attended the event this evening, which I think really demonstrates the amount of interest we have here in the Westchester and Liberty communities in this election and the choices we'll be making in November. And as promised, we're getting out in time to go watch the Bengals for those who want to do that. With that said, thank you again. And I wish everyone a very pleasant evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, John.
Thank you. Go Bengals.